The air in the capital city was a thick, greasy soup of exhaust fumes, roasting spices, and the low, simmering hum of political tension. It was the kind of city that could boil over in a heartbeat, and the diplomatic convoy was a string of pearls rolling through a minefield. In the driver's seat of the third vehicle, a standard, unarmored sedan, Ana Rivera kept her hands light on the wheel, her gaze sweeping from the road to her mirrors in a calm, rhythmic pattern. To the other members of the security detail, she was just the local hire, the immigrant driver with a quiet demeanor and a file that said she was reliable and unremarkable. The head of the diplomatic security team, a man named Agent Thorne, had looked at that file and seen nothing of interest. He was a man who saw the world in terms of threats and assets, and Ana, to him, was neither. She was furniture. He had made his disdain clear in the morning briefing, his eyes sweeping past her as he addressed his team of hardened, ex-military contractors. "Our local driver is for appearances only," he had said, his voice a low, condescending rumble. "She follows our lead. She does not improvise. She does not think. She just drives. Are we clear?" A chorus of "yes, sir" had followed. Ana, standing at the back of the room, had simply nodded, her expression unreadable. She was used to men like Thorne, men who mistook silence for weakness, who saw her worn face and her foreign accent and saw a victim, a refugee who should be grateful for the job. They had no idea that her silence was a fortress, built over years of surviving places that would have broken men like him. She ran her pre-drive checks with a meticulous, almost obsessive precision that the other drivers found amusing. She didn't just check the fuel and the tires, she checked the tension of the fan belt by touch, the viscosity of the oil between her thumb and forefinger, the faint, almost inaudible whine of the alternator. She was listening to the car's soul. "You planning on rebuilding the engine before we leave, Rivera?" One of the other drivers had called out with a smirk. Ana hadn't replied. She just finished her work, her movements economical and sure. She knew that in a city like this, your vehicle wasn't just transportation, it was your armor, your weapon, and your only way out. You didn't trust it. You knew it. The convoy began to move, a sleek, dark serpent sliding through the congested streets. Thorne's armored SUV was at the front, bristling with antennas and hardened steel. Ana's sedan, carrying low-level administrative staff, was tucked into the middle, the soft part of the convoy. Her job was simple: keep 3 car lengths behind the vehicle in front of her and do exactly as she was told. But as they moved deeper into the old city, a cold dread began to creep up Ana's spine. Her instincts, honed in the narrow, treacherous streets of a dozen other forgotten wars, were screaming. She noticed the small things, the details that the security team, with their eyes on the rooftops, had missed. A fruit vendor's cart was positioned at an odd angle, blocking a potential escape route down a side alley. The usual gaggle of children who played soccer in the main square were gone. And there was a new, disturbing silence in the air, a lack of the usual cacophony of horns and shouts. The city was holding its breath. She keyed the low-frequency radio she was supposed to use only for emergencies. "This is follow 3, she said, her voice a low murmur. "I have a negative feeling about this route. The street ahead is a natural choke point. I suggest we divert to alternate route Bravo." The response came not from the comms operator, but from Thorne himself, his voice a whip of pure annoyance. "Negative, follow 3. Maintain your position and radio silence. I'm not changing a route planned by satellite intelligence because of a driver's feeling. Stay in your lane." The line went dead. Ana's hands tightened on the wheel. She had been dismissed. She was just the driver. Her training, the brutal, brilliant lessons she had learned in a place so secret it wasn't even on a map, screamed at her to disobey, to turn, to get out of the funnel. But she was a different person now. She was a ghost, and ghosts followed orders. She kept her 3 car lengths, her eyes scanning, her body a coiled spring of pure, unadulterated dread. She knew what was coming. The street narrowed, the tall, crumbling tenements pressing in on either side, blocking out the sun. It was a perfect, textbook fatal funnel. And just as the lead vehicle reached the center, The world erupted in a cataclysm of fire and thunder. The IED was massive, a deep, guttural roar of an explosion that ripped the lead-armored SUV apart, peeling its reinforced steel like the skin of a fruit. The shockwave slammed into Anna's sedan, making the vehicle leap sideways, the sound of physical blow that left her ears ringing. For a split second, the world was a chaotic, slow-motion ballet of fire, smoke, and flying debris. Then, reality crashed back in, sharp and brutal. The street had become a kill box. Heavy machine gun fire erupted from the windows and rooftops of the surrounding buildings, a relentless, deafening storm of bullets that tore into the stalled convoy. RPGs screamed down, one slamming into the rear vehicle, turning it into a roaring inferno. They were trapped, caught between two fires, with nowhere to run. The security team, what was left of them, returned fire, their disciplined bursts of futile protest against the overwhelming, multi-directional assault. Anna saw men she had shared coffee with that morning cut down, their bodies slumping against the bullet-riddled doors of their vehicles. In the chaos, her mind went cold and quiet. The panic, the fear, the noise, it all receded, replaced by a crystalline, diamond-hard focus. She was no longer Anna Rivera, the quiet immigrant driver. She was someone else, a ghost awakened by the familiar scent of cordite and death. Her assigned security guard, a young contractor with wide, terrified eyes, was frozen in the passenger seat, his rifle clutched in a white-knuckled grip. "We're all gonna die," he whimpered. Anna didn't even look at him. Her eyes were on Thorne's vehicle. It was crippled, its engine block smoking, its tires shredded. It was a stationary target, a tomb. But she could see movement inside. He was still alive. And the attackers were beginning to concentrate their fire on his SUV, knowing the command element was inside. The textbook response was to retreat. Her orders were to protect herself and her low-value passengers. But her training, the real training, had a different creed. You never, ever leave the command element behind. Ignoring the screams of her passengers in the back seat, she slammed the car into gear. She didn't reverse. She accelerated, flooring the engine, her sedan lurching forward directly into the heart of the firefight. "What are you doing?" the young guard shrieked. "You're driving into it." Bullets sparked off the asphalt around them, a handful punching through the windshield, which exploded in a spiderweb of fractured glass. Anna didn't flinch. She hunched low over the wheel, her movements precise, her face a mask of cold fury. Thorne, trapped in his vehicle, saw her coming. Through the smoke and the chaos, he saw the unarmored sedan, the one driven by the woman he had dismissed, hurtling towards him. "Fall back, follow 3, he screamed into his failing radio. "That is a direct order. Fall back." But Anna wasn't listening to his orders anymore. She was listening to the ghost inside her, the one who knew how to drive through hell. With a skill that defied all logic, she executed a perfect J-turn in the middle of the kill box, a maneuver that should have been impossible in the narrow, debris-strewn street. The sedan spun 180 degrees, its passenger side slamming flush against the door of Thorne's crippled SUV, creating a small, temporary shield of steel. She laid on the horn, a long, desperate, angry blast. "Get in!" she screamed, her voice no longer the quiet murmur of a subordinate, but the raw, powerful roar of a commander. "Get in, or you die right there. Move." Thorne was paralyzed for a second, his mind unable to reconcile the image of the quiet driver with the warrior who had just created a lifeline out of pure, suicidal audacity. But the hail of bullets impacting the far side of her car was a convincing argument. He shoved his door open, grabbing the arm of the wounded diplomat beside him. "Go, go," he yelled. The street had become a maelstrom. The air was a thick, choking fog of smoke and dust, punctuated by the muzzle flashes of the attackers. Anna's sedan was taking a beating, bullets thudding into its frame, windows shattering. But she held her position, her foot steady on the brake, her eyes scanning, watching, waiting. The young guard in her passenger's seat had finally broken from his stupor and was laying down suppressive fire, his rifle chattering, providing a few precious seconds of cover. Thorne and the diplomat scrambled into the back of her car, falling over each other in their desperation. "We're in," Thorne yelled. Anna didn't wait for confirmation. The moment she felt the weight shift, her foot was off the brake and on the gas. The tires screeched, fighting for purchase on the slick, blood-soaked asphalt. For a terrifying second, the car just spun its wheels, a stationary target. Then, the tires bit, and the sedan shot forward, not back the way they had come, but deeper into the maze of the old city. "Where are you going?" Thorne screamed, his voice a mixture of fear and rage. "The extraction route is back the other way." "Their main force is back there," Anna said, her voice a low growl, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. "They're expecting us to run." "We're not running. We're hunting." Thorne stared at the back of her head, at the quiet immigrant woman who was now driving them into the abyss, and he finally realized his mistake. He hadn't just underestimated her. He had fundamentally misunderstood what kind of creature she was. He wasn't in a car with a driver. He was in a cage with a tiger he had just helped set free. The sedan screamed through the narrow, labyrinthine alleys of the old city, a wounded beast running on pure adrenaline. The sounds of the main firefight faded behind them, replaced by the echo of their own engine and the sharp, metallic scrape of the car's frame against the ancient stone walls. The side mirrors were gone, sheared off in a particularly tight squeeze. The car was a mess of shattered glass, bullet holes, and the raw, terrified breathing of the men in the back. But at the wheel, Anna was an extension of the machine. Her movements were fluid, precise, and brutally efficient. She took corners at speeds that should have been impossible, her hands a blur on the wheel and the gear shift, using the handbrake to pivot the car in the tight, cobbled spaces. She wasn't just driving. She was flying at ground level. "You're going the wrong way," Thorne yelled, his knuckles white as he gripped the seat in front of him. "The embassy is south. You're heading north, deeper into their territory." "The main routes will be blocked," Anna said, her eyes flicking from the road to the rearview mirror. "They'll have checkpoints. They'll be waiting for us. They won't be waiting for us here." She was navigating a maze of back alleys and forgotten market squares from memory, a mental map of the city's hidden arteries that was more detailed than any satellite image. She had spent her first 6 months in this city not just learning the official routes, but walking, studying, memorizing the unofficial ones, the smugglers' paths, the escape routes, the places the police and the military were afraid to go. She had prepared for this day without ever knowing it was coming. A motorcycle with 2 armed men suddenly appeared behind them, gaining fast. "They've found us," the diplomat in the back whimpered. Anna's eyes narrowed. She saw a street market ahead, a chaotic jumble of canvas stalls and wooden carts. Instead of speeding up, she slowed down slightly, letting the motorcycle get closer. "What are you doing?" Thorne demanded. "Get us out of here." "Hold on," was her only reply. At the last possible second, she swerved hard to the right, her bumper clipping the leg of a heavy fruit cart. The cart tipped, spilling a river of oranges across the narrow street. The motorcycle, unable to stop, hit the rolling fruit and went down in a spectacular, cartwheeling crash. Anna didn't even look back. She was already accelerating down the next alley. Thorne stared, his mouth agape. It wasn't luck. It was a calculated, brilliant, and utterly ruthless piece of defensive driving. He had seen Special Forces operators with less tactical awareness. He was beginning to realize that the file he had read on her wasn't just incomplete, it was a work of fiction. They broke out onto a wider, but still deserted, boulevard. Up ahead, a roadblock. A heavy truck had been pulled across the road, and a half-dozen gunmen were taking up positions behind it. It was another trap. "It's a dead end," Thorne said, his voice grim. "This is it." Anna scanned the scene. To the left was a solid wall. To the right was a small park, its entrance blocked by heavy concrete planters. There was no way through. But there was a way over. She turned to Thorne, a strange, almost feral light in her eyes. "Are you a religious man, Agent Thorne?" "What?" he stammered. "Because you're about to need to be," she said, and turned the car, not away from the roadblock, but aiming it directly at the edge of the park. There was a small, stone fountain with a wide, curved basin that formed a natural ramp. "Hold on," she screamed, and floored the accelerator. The sedan roared toward the fountain. The gunman at the roadblock, confused by her insane trajectory, hesitated for a split second. That was all she needed. The car hit the edge of the fountain at over 60 miles per hour. For a single, breathtaking, impossible moment, the vehicle was airborne, sailing over the concrete planters. It landed in the soft grass of the park with a bone-jarring crash that shattered the suspension and sent a shockwave through the cabin. But the tires held. They were through. Anna fought the wheel, wrestling the crippled car across the park, weaving between trees, a shower of dirt and grass in their wake. She burst out the other side, back onto a clear street, and accelerated away, leaving a group of utterly dumbfounded gunmen standing at a roadblock that had been rendered irrelevant. Inside the car, the silence was absolute, save for the agonized groaning of the car's frame. The diplomat was hyperventilating. The young security guard was staring into space, his mind clearly broken by what he had just experienced. And Thorn was looking at Anna. He was seeing the blood that was still slowly seeping from a small cut on her forehead, the fierce, focused set of her jaw, the way her hands, steady as a surgeon's, never left the wheel. The pity, the condescension, the arrogance, it had all been burned away in that flight through the air. What was left was a raw, humbling, and profound sense of awe. They were alive because of her. They had driven through a kill box, outmaneuvered assassins, and literally flown over a barricade. He didn't know who she was or where she had come from, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was not a driver. She was a force of nature. The embassy gates were a vision of impossible safety. Anna smashed the battered, smoking sedan through the final flimsy checkpoint, the car finally dying with a gut-wrenching screech of metal as it rolled to a stop in the center of the fortified courtyard. For a moment, no one moved. The world was a muffled silence, the only sound the frantic pounding of their own hearts and the distant, fading echo of sirens. Then, the doors of the embassy burst open. A team of Marines swarmed the vehicle, their rifles raised, their faces a mixture of aggression and confusion. They surrounded the car, shouting commands. "Hands where I can see them. Get out of the vehicle. Now." Agent Thorn, his composure slowly returning, fumbled for his identification. He kicked his door open and stumbled out, his hands raised. "Hold your fire," he yelled. "I'm diplomatic security. We have a VIP." The Marines lowered their weapons, but kept their circle tight. Thorn helped the shaken diplomat out of the back, then turned back to the car. Anna hadn't moved. She was still in the driver's seat, her hands resting lightly on the wheel, her head bowed slightly, her breathing slow and deep. The adrenaline was finally leaving her, and in its place was a bone-deep, soul-crushing exhaustion. Thorn gently opened her door. "Anna," he said, his voice now quiet, stripped of all its earlier authority. "It's over. We're safe." She looked up at him, and for the first time, he saw not the warrior, not the commander, but the woman. Her eyes were filled with a profound, ancient weariness. She gave a single, small nod and allowed him to help her out of the car. The moment her feet touched the ground, her legs gave out. Thorn caught her, his arms wrapping around her small, surprisingly strong frame. She was trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer, overwhelming release of a battle finally won. "You're okay," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "You're okay." He looked down at her, at this quiet immigrant woman who had just performed a feat of arms that would become a legend, and he felt a wave of shame so profound it was dizzying. He had laughed at her. He had dismissed her. He had ordered her to her death. And she had responded by driving through fire to save his life. The embassy's medical team took over, leading Anna and the others into the sterile, quiet calm of the infirmary. As they were being treated for minor cuts and bruises, Thorn was already in a secure communications room, his voice a low, urgent hum as he gave his preliminary report to Langley. He left out nothing: the flawed plan, the perfect ambush, his own catastrophic failure of command, and the impossible, brilliant, defiant actions of his local driver. "I don't know who she is," he finished, his voice raw. "But she is not who her file says she is. You need to find out. You need to find out now." While the bureaucracy of the intelligence world began to grind into motion, Anna sat alone in a small, quiet office, a cup of sweet tea warming her hands. She had been checked by the doctors and had refused any sedation. She just wanted the quiet. She wanted the ghost to go back to sleep. But it was too late. The ghost was awake. An hour later, Thorne found her. He didn't speak. He just stood in the doorway, watching her. He had the file in his hand, a thin, single-page printout that had been sent back from a deep archive server at Langley. "They found you," he said softly. Anna looked up, her expression unreadable. "It's not your real name, is it?" he asked. She shook her head. "Anna Rivera is the name on my papers. The name of the woman who was granted asylum." "And before," he pressed gently, "who were you before?" She looked down at her hands, at the faint, silvery scars that traced a map of a life he couldn't imagine. "I was a captain," she whispered, the word tasting like a foreign language on her tongue. "In the 77th Special Operations Brigade. We were an extraction unit. My specialty was getting people out of places they weren't supposed to be." Thorne's blood ran cold. The 77th. It was a ghost unit, a legendary team from her home country's military, trained by the best U.S. and Israeli special forces before a brutal civil war had torn the nation apart. They were said to be the best urban combat drivers in the world. The unit had been wiped out in the final, bloody days of the war. Or so the official story went. "The official report says you were killed in the siege of the capital," Thorne said, his voice a choked whisper. "The report was a kindness," she said, a sad smile touching her lips. "It allowed me to disappear. To start over. I just wanted to drive. To be quiet." The weight of it all finally hit him. The meticulous checks, the knowledge of the city, the impossible driving. It wasn't luck or instinct. It was the result of the most elite training on the planet. He had had a living legend on his payroll, and he had treated her like a cab driver. He slowly walked forward and placed something on the table in front of her. It was his own challenge coin, a heavy, silver disc bearing the insignia of the State Department's most elite security force. It was an object of immense pride and respect, given only to those who had proven their worth in the fire. "I was wrong," he said, his voice thick with an emotion he rarely showed. "I was arrogant and I was blind. You saved my life. You saved all our lives. Whatever your name is, whatever you were, you are the finest soldier I have ever seen." Anna looked at the coin, then back at him. She didn't pick it up. She simply gave a single, slow nod of acknowledgement. The apology had been made. The debt had been paid. The two warriors in a room, from two different worlds, finally understood each other. The aftermath of the ambush sent shockwaves through the intelligence community. The story of what happened in that narrow, deadly street, and more importantly, the story of the quiet driver who had defied a kill box, became a classified legend overnight. Thorne's official report was a stark, brutally honest account that placed the blame for the initial failure squarely on his own shoulders and praised Anna's actions in terms usually reserved for Medal of Honor citations. He called her actions a display of tactical brilliance and personal courage beyond the highest traditions of any service. But the real story, the one about the ghost captain from the 77th Brigade, was buried. Langley sealed her file, classifying it at a level so high that even Thorne could no longer access it. They were protecting their asset, a ghost they had just realized was still on the board. Anna, for her part, wanted nothing more than to disappear again. She was offered a quiet, generous severance package and a ticket to any city in the world. It was a thank you, and it was a dismissal. Go back to being a ghost. But Thorne wouldn't let it happen. He went to his superiors, to the very top of the State Department. "You don't understand," he argued in a heated, closed-door meeting. "You don't throw away a weapon like that. You don't put a master strategist behind the wheel of a taxi. She's not a liability. She's the most valuable asset we have in this region. His pleas, backed by the sheer, undeniable evidence of her actions, worked. A new proposal was drafted. A week later, Thorne found Anna as she was packing her single, small bag. He didn't ask her to stay. He made her an offer. "They're creating a new unit," he said. "A low-profile, rapid response team. Not for standard diplomatic security. For the other stuff. The situations that go off-book. The ones where the plan has already failed. They're calling it the Pathfinder program. They want you to design it. And they want you to lead it." Anna was stunned into silence. She had spent years running from command, from the responsibility, from the memory of the team she had lost. "I'm not a commander anymore," she said softly. "You were never not a commander," Thorne replied. "You just needed a war to remind you." He placed a new file on the table in front of her. It was thin. Inside was a single ID card. It didn't have her old name or her asylum name. It had a new one. And under the title, it didn't say driver or captain. It said Tactical Operations Director. "This isn't a demotion or a desk job," Thorne said. "This is a recognition. You won't be in the field every day. You'll be the one who sees the traps before they're sprung. You'll be the one who trains our people how to drive through fire." Anna looked down at the ID, at the new name, the new title. It wasn't a return to her old life. It was a new one, a synthesis of the ghost she had been and the quiet woman she had tried to become. It was a chance to use her skills not just to survive, but to protect. She finally looked up at Thorne, a faint, determined smile on her lips. "When do I start?" In the months that followed, the Pathfinder program became a quiet, highly effective reality. Anna, working from a discreet headquarters in Geneva, recruited a small, international team of overlooked and underestimated talents: a washed-out hacker, a disgraced intelligence analyst, a retired cartographer. They were her ghosts, her misfits. And they were brilliant. They became the State Department's secret weapon, the team that was called in when all other options were off the table. Thorne served as her liaison to the official world, her shield against the bureaucracy. They became a formidable team, a partnership forged in the crucible of that fiery alley. The quiet immigrant driver was gone. The ghost captain was buried. In her place was a new legend, one whispered in the halls of power. They called her Pathfinder, the woman who could always find a way out, no matter how dark the road. She had been laughed at, dismissed, and nearly killed. But in the end, she had done more than just drive through fire. She had shown them all a new way to navigate the flames.